In Sayre Bedinger's latest Denver Broncos mock draft as a post-scouting combine preview, the Broncos address several positional needs going into this year's NFL draft, and they hold on to all their draft capital. What picks did Sayre choose for the Denver Broncos? You get that and much more on today's brand new episode, Locked on Broncos.
You are Locked on Broncos, your daily Denver Broncos podcast. Part of the Locked on Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's up, Broncos country? Welcome back into a brand new episode, Locked on Broncos, your daily Denver Broncos podcast here on the Locked on NFL Network, your team every day from the South Stands to the end zone. I'm your host, as always, Cody Roark, joined alongside by my co-host, Sayre Bedinger. Both of us, we cover the Denver Broncos for the Locked on Network and 9 News. Thank you, Broncos country, for making Locked on Broncos your first listen of the day. Every single day when you wake up, you have your morning coffee, your breakfast, you go to the gym, you're on your way to work. We appreciate you turning your dials here to Locked on Broncos. You can get this podcast free and available everywhere you get your podcast in audio format. You can also get us here on YouTube. Go ahead, hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and we would love it if you would just comment on the video and give it a thumbs up for the algorithm. It would mean the world to us to help us grow to even more members in Broncos country. Sayre, my friend, hey, I thought you did a really good job putting together this post-NFL scouting combine mock draft and taking a look at it. The Broncos, they got some pretty good talent through the first 3 rounds here, and man, I can't wait to break it all down with you here, my man.
I'm excited. I'm excited to break it down. You know, we haven't done a mock draft together on the show yet, Cody, as far as I can remember. So I think this will be fun. I think it'll be good. Kind of look back at, the weekend. Every single time that a position group takes the field, I think Broncos fans take to Twitter and they're like, oh, man, we should take this guy at 9, or we should take this guy at 40. We should trade up into the first round to get multiple picks to get this guy. Because after the scouting combine, as we know, there's 100 first-round picks, Cody. Every player that runs a good 40-yard dash is a first-rounder. But now we have an opportunity to kind of sit back, take a look at the weekend that was, and really just kind of say, okay, now we know a little bit of what George Paton likes based on last year. What might he do with all these picks in 2022?
It's going to be exciting to see how it all plays out in real life here. But, Sayre, based on your conduction of this mock draft here, you made it to where the Broncos still have all their picks for the most part. So that means no trade for a franchise quarterback at this point in time. So Denver still holds the 9th overall pick. And ironically enough, yesterday's episode of the show, we took a look at the edge rushers in this year's NFL draft. And I can't help but say, you went here with Jermaine Johnson, edge rusher out of Florida State, who tested off the charts here. What led to your thought process here? How did it play out to where Jermaine Johnson was there at 9? Were there any other pass rushers that were still there when you conducted this mock draft?
Absolutely, there were. There was a number of players that I kind of questioned. Do I take this guy? Sauce Gardner is really rising up the prospect ranking. So I think the cornerback out of Cincinnati, a lot of people might really like him after his workout and just the kind of swagger that he has, not giving up a touchdown his entire college career. So I think there's options there. There's different things that you look at, and there's different positional needs. But to me, going into free agency, I look at the depth of free agency, and I look at the Broncos, needs right now and where they're at, and the depth of this draft. I feel like the edge position is the strongest position. And not only do I feel like it's the strongest position, I feel like it's the deepest position, especially among like the top 100 players. And so when you're talking about that, I think that gives you the best overall value with that 9th overall pick to go with that position group. Hey, it fits a Broncos position of need, number one. Number two, it's a premier position, so it's a guy that's going to play pretty much every down for you. And number three, it's a difference maker. It's a guy that can actually, impact the outcome of games with what he's able to do. And we know Jermaine Johnson, he did that at Florida State. Of course, they weren't great as a team, but he certainly did his part. Like we talked about on that edge rusher episode, 17 and a half tackles for loss, 11 and a half sacks, almost 12 sacks, and obviously a couple of forced fumbles as well coming over in his first year from Georgia.
Well, no, I think the interesting thing to look at here, especially with Jermaine Johnson, I think you make some valid points too. I think Broncos country would lose their minds if the Broncos drafted a cornerback at number 9 2 years in a row. But then like I said, I can't help but have the appeal of Sauce Gardner, man. Just he is a stud. He's going to be a great cornerback in this year's National Football League. He has a chance to make some noise here as a rookie, but so does Jermaine Johnson. So I really do like this pick here. And my question to you as well, I know a lot of members in Broncos country have been commenting on our YouTube videos on Twitter, they've been saying that the Broncos should go out and they should get Chandler Jones in free agency. In my opinion, Sarah, I feel like that would cost an arm and a leg and a tooth and a kidney versus where you can maybe get a guy who could be your franchise pass rusher in this year's draft. And I think that Jermaine Johnson has the traits to do that with the right environment around him. He can maybe grow into that role and be a franchise guy versus going in and bringing in a guy like Chandler Jones. Would you agree with me? Would you go with either Jermaine Johnson in the draft? Would you go draft or would you go free agency for edge rusher?
I think you almost have to plan on George Payton going both directions, right? After what we saw last year, he went for Kyle Fuller, Ronald Darby in free agency. And I know it's a different position group, but I mean, the same logic applies. You saw what injuries did to the position last year. And if you draft a rookie, I look back at and compare this again to the Jalen Phillips situation in Miami. He wasn't even necessarily starting right away for the Dolphins last year. So they had a good rotation, and you bring in a first round rookie and say, hey, the pressure's kind of off. You can come in and we're going to give you opportunities to play 50, 60% of the snaps. You're going to play, but you're going to be playing in rotation with this guy. And that's where I think the Broncos free agency tiers that we're going to be looking at. First of all, if you're planning on getting a guy like Chandler Jones, that must mean that you have a quarterback in place, because to me, Chandler Jones is going to go to a place where, hey, you're going to probably be winning a lot of games and getting a lot of money. So I think Chandler Jones is a huge, he's going to get, like you said, upwards of 20 million plus on a new contract per year. So I think the Broncos go a step back in free agency in terms of like the pricing on a guy. Like last year, they went for Ronald Darby. You're not breaking the bank for Darby, but he's a solid NFL starter and a really good free agent pickup being under 30 years old. I know this isn't a mock draft, but I'm saying Hassan Reddick from the Carolina Panthers is the guy that I would watch for the Broncos. Fits the athletic profile, really productive pass rusher, tremendous athlete. And I think you could get him on a pretty low risk deal, 3 or 4 years, not breaking the bank at over 20 million a year.
No, it's good to factor in both sides of free agency, the NFL draft, and Sayre Bedinger's latest mock draft after the NFL Scouting Combine. Coming up here in just a moment, though, Broncos country. Do the Broncos add a quarterback in round 2, or do they go with another position, especially if Kenny Young, Josie Jewell, or Alexander Johnson depart in free agency? What were Sayre's picks? We get his thought process coming up here in just a moment. But before we do that, let me tell you about BetOnline.net, the sponsor of today's episode, Lockdown Broncos. And folks, as you know it, football season is over, unfortunately, but we have college basketball and pro basketball ongoing as we speak right now. From all the latest odds, totals, player performance props, and where the next fired coach will land, BetOnline is the number one spot for all of your sports betting needs. And BetOnline, they remain the best spot for all your sports scores, podcasts, and information this season. And it's not just basketball. They also provide you with coverage on hockey, boxing, and MMA action for all the information that you need all year long. So head to the website today, use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and the action at betonline.net. BetOnline, where the game starts. As we jump into the second half action on today's episode, Lockdown Broncos. Once again, Broncos country, thank you so much for making Lockdown Broncos your first listen of the day. It means the world to both Sayre and I that you take time to subscribe, to watch, to listen to us on your favorite podcast and provider. We are here every single day, even in the offseason. Even when there's not much going on, there's always Broncos talk to be had. We're still here 5 days a week all year long, because for the true fan, there is never an offseason. Sayre, continuing on here with your mock draft after the NFL Scouting Combine. The Broncos hold a pick here at pick number 40 in round 2. Where did they go and why?
Well, I'm really looking to make a lot of friends with this one, Cody. I picked Desmond Ridder, the quarterback out of Cincinnati. I just feel going into this offseason, of course, like right now, everybody's on pins and needles waiting for Aaron Rodgers to make a decision. And if he makes a decision and it doesn't involve the Green Bay Packers, we won't be talking about Desmond Ridder and the Denver Broncos in all likelihood. But as things stand right now, I think it's a very legitimate possibility. And I don't know how much George Payton went to see him play while he was at Cincinnati. I have no idea of any of that. We know of a few guys that he did go to see this past season. But Desmond Ridder, to me, fits the exact profile of what the Broncos are looking for at the quarterback position. And I know he's not a refined product, but what do they want? They want toughness. They want a guy that's got intangible qualities. They want a guy that, could come in and possibly play right away, I would think. And for me, Desmond Ridder, with 4 years of starting experience, a 3-time captain, the workout that he just posted at the scouting combine, I think everybody saw that on tape anyway, but it just confirms he's an elite athlete with tremendous intangibles. I think people need to understand, like, he's a father already, so he's got a lot of life experience for a young guy. So he's a dad. I mean, he's been to the college football playoff, tons of experience, really coachable. Teammates obviously love him. I think that he's kind of a no-brainer to me if he's on the board at pick number 40.
He's a great leader, and he fits the bill too. Like I said, I would not be opposed to Desmond Ridder in a Denver Broncos uniform, especially in round 2. I feel like for Denver, it gives him a chance to mold and develop a guy. Like, maybe he comes in and starts right away as a rookie, but he doesn't necessarily have to, right? And I think I'm really interested in seeing, like, if this is a scenario that plays out, like this is mock NFL right now. If this is what George Paton does, I'll be very intrigued to see the trajectory and the developmental path that he puts a guy like Desmond Ridder on. So there's the Broncos pick at number 40 here, according to Sayre Bedinger. But then they have another pick here at 64. And I couldn't help but wonder here, looking at this situation, obviously you went linebacker, Leo Chenal. My question to you, Sayre, looking at the standpoint of where Kenny Young, Alexander Johnson, Josie Jewell are, did this factor in? Like, are you parting ways with any of those guys for this pick, or are you bringing at least one back? I'm eager for your thought process here as it pertains here to a Chenal.
Yeah, this was kind of a tough pick for me to make, because I think at the bottom of round 2, there's so many different options there that you're considering, especially after you've already gone edge. Like, do I go edge again and get a little greedy off the edge there? I've already gone quarterback, and I don't know that you're necessarily waiting till 64 to take a quarterback. So I don't think that scenario is really even on the table. So I'm kind of floating around between offensive tackle, linebacker, corner, kind of just looking at who's the best player available at this point, because I also kind of do my mock drafts thinking in terms of what's the depth of free agency like. And like you mentioned, linebacker is a deep position, even just on the Broncos' own in-house guys in free agency. So I kind of made this pick, Cody, with the thought in mind that you re-sign one of those guys to a 1-year deal or maybe a 2-year deal, because all of them are coming off of injury, right? I mean, Josie Jewell, I think, would be willing to come back to the Denver Broncos, but how much do you really commit to him for beyond just the season? He's got a torn pectoral. The same thing for Alexander Johnson. And then Kenny Young dealt with his own injuries after coming to Denver last year. So to me, in Chenal, you're getting a guy that can either sit behind a Josie Jewell or Kenny Young or Alexander Johnson for a year, or kind of do what you did with Baron Browning last year. I mean, kind of slowly integrate him into the lineup over the year. I know that was kind of out of necessity more than anything else, but maybe you'd be a little bit more intentional with the Chenal, because dude is aggressive as heck against the run, and he just flies around the field. And he put together, you talk about Baron Browning last year, a 9.98 in the RAS score. Leo Chenal at the linebacker position, 9.99. So, I mean, that's big-time athleticism for a 250-pound inside linebacker that gets kind of the thumper label. 18 and a half tackles for loss, Cody, 8 sacks last year for the Wisconsin Badgers attacking the line of scrimmage. And that's what the Broncos missed, wasn't it, when Jewell and Johnson went down?
Just imagining those two guys, Baron Browning and this guy on the field together, obviously the athletic traits are there, but I mean, it's also something that stands out to me as well, because what has been the mold here for when George Paton came in as GM? What does he look for in linebackers? Guys who are athletic. And what did he say as well? In today's day and age, with it being a passing lead, you need linebackers who can cover, guys who can get after the quarterback. And you might have a situation too. Like I said, you could take a little bit of a page out of Dan Quinn's book, what he's able to do with Micah Parsons. You can maybe mix these guys, put somebody at edge rusher on one player on a certain package, the other guy at linebacker. I mean, you have a lot of different options here. So, Sayre, hey, look, I can't disagree with any of these picks. I like them. I feel like for the Broncos, if this is their first 3 picks that they have around 1, 2, and 3, and you get these 3 guys, I think it adds value to what the Denver Broncos have on the roster already as is. It builds on a strength, but it also solidifies some of the weaknesses that this team has had. And all of a sudden now you're not worried about these dynamics here. You have a quarterback that you can develop here. You have obviously an edge rusher that can get after the quarterback that will likely start in his first season. And then you have a linebacker who will obviously probably be in the rotational role if he is drafted at this point in this year's NFL draft. So obviously a lot of insight here from Sayre Bedinger, his post NFL scouting combine mock draft of Broncos country. But coming up here in just a moment, we're going to dive a little bit deeper into Sayre's round 3 part of the mock draft, where the Broncos add a ridiculously talented playmaker to an already skill-filled position. What is that? Who is the player? What is his contribution level? We get to that coming up here in just a moment. But before we do that, let me tell you about rockauto.com, the sponsor of today's episode, Lockdown Broncos. And if you need anything for your vehicle, ladies and gentlemen, rockauto.com, they have everything that you could be looking for your car or truck. Whether you're looking to renovate something in your garage, whether it's for your daily driver, rockauto.com is the place to be if you're looking for parts and things for your vehicle here today. And you get to save time and money when you choose Rock Auto. Why choose to spend 30%, 50%, or even 100% more for the same parts from a chain store or a car dealership? RockAuto.com, they're a family-owned business that's been serving auto parts customers online for over 20 years. And Rock Auto's prices are always reliably low, whether you're a professional or a do-it-yourselfer. So head over to rockauto.com here today to see all the parts available for your car or truck. Right, Lockdown Broncos in there. How did you hear about us box? So that they know that we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. rockauto.com. As we jump into the fourth quarter action on today's episode, Lockdown Broncos, diving a little bit deeper into Sayre Bedinger's latest post-NFL Scout and Combine mock draft. The Broncos, Sayre's adding talent almost at every position that's going to bolster where Denver wants to be here. And there is a certain product, Sayre, out of North Dakota State, who is absolutely tearing it up. He tore it up in the Senior Bowl. He turned heads at the NFL Scout and Combine. You have Christian Watson to the Denver Broncos here in round 3. Let's talk about this, this pick and this selection too, because you're adding another talented wide receiver to an already deep wide receiver class. I'm eager to hear your thought process on this one.
Well, I love Christian Watson, first of all. I mean, dating back to last offseason when we spent how much time going through Trey Lance film and watching him throw passes at North Dakota State. And really, Christian Watson was the primary benefactor of Trey Lance's ascent in the NFL community's eyes. I mean, he was just constantly being targeted in that offense. And not only was he constantly being targeted, but you saw him get used a lot. I mean, I'm not gonna say he's Deebo Samuel, right? But I mean, in the North Dakota State context, he was kind of that guy for them, kind of taking the ball out of the backfield, returning kicks when they need. I mean, they asked him to do that, and he did an amazing job in that way. I believe he was even an All-American return specialist that one. Fact check me on that, somebody in the comments. But I mean, he's been outstanding for North Dakota State. Excuse me, I'm getting a Javonte Williams on the brain here. But North Dakota State, and obviously we know that George Paton is not afraid to spend top 100 picks on guys from smaller schools. And I say smaller school, North Dakota State is an FCS powerhouse with tons of NFL talent. But man, Christian Watson is a guy at 6'4", who ran a sub 4.4 in the 40-yard dash, jumped out of the stadium. He did everything that we expected him to do based on what we saw at the Senior Bowl, Cody. And I feel like, to me, you're in an interesting situation here. The wide receiver position definitely underwhelmed last season, and a lot of that is to do with the quarterback position. But at the same time, I think you have to kind of hedge your bets a little bit. Tim Patrick has a very unique out in his contract after 2022 with only $1.5 million in dead money on the Denver Broncos salary cap. So you have to wonder, like, why did they build that in to his contract, the out that they have to get out of it? And then you look at Jerry Jeudy and the concerns over, drops and the kind of complaining that he's been doing about not getting the ball enough, which we agree. We want Jeudy to get the ball. But KJ Hamler coming off of injury, what's he going to be like post ACL? All those questions add up to me to say, hey, maybe with 5 picks in the top 100, if you keep them all, a player like Christian Watson, if he's available, like you and I talked about before the show. I mean, the mock draft simulators have him available in the 70s, but he could be gone before pick 32.
It's going to be interesting to see how it all pans out here. You add additional playmaker here at wide receiver for the Broncos, and Watson, I feel like he could be like the next Cooper Kupp. He's got the skill set and he's got the body to just do a lot of different things. And he's a physical run blocker too, which is one thing I love seeing at the Senior Bowl with him. But then for your other pick here, you also selected a right tackle here in Abraham Lucas. So tell us a little bit more about why you decided to go with a rookie here at right tackle in the final part of your mock draft.
Well, I just think in this draft class, you've got to take a tackle or two at some point. The Broncos have kind of avoided it, for lack of a better term, over the last couple seasons, which has been really odd considering how good at least the 2020 draft. Remember that first round where we took Jerry Jeudy. A number of offensive tackles in that draft have already become stars in the NFL, namely Tristan Wirfs of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who was taken just a couple picks before Jeudy. So they've passed on tackles in the draft for the last couple years, and not just in round 1, but like every round. They didn't draft anybody at the tackle position despite their need at that spot. And so I think now this is the year where you really have to like buckle down and say, okay, this draft class is deep at the tackle position, and it's really, really good all around. And Abraham Lucas is a guy who played right tackle in college at Washington State and did kind of everything that you wanted to see from a potential wide zone type of player, ranking in the top level of relative athletic scores in terms of 40-yard dash, agility drills, 10-yard split, all of those different things. And that kind of movement is going to be necessary in this offense. You're going to have to get out and move. You're going to have to use your length. And he has those things. He has those qualities. Plus, he has a lot of experience on the job. So I think that definitely Abraham Lucas is a guy. And again, these mock draft simulators, we don't know where these guys are going to end up, but where I got him at the bottom of round 3, Cody, with that second selection from the Los Angeles Rams, I think that's a fine spot. I mean, I think that'd be a really nice value based on some of the things that people have said about him throughout this last season.
Thank you, Les Snead, for the additional draft picks. And look, Sayre, if anybody's going to turn that into more valuable currency, it's going to be General Manager George Paton. I'm looking forward to seeing how things pan out. And look, this is going to be an interesting week here on Locked On Broncos. There could be some decisions at the quarterback position. The outlook for the Denver Broncos, it could change this week, Sayre. So it's something we are monitoring. If, in fact, the Broncos are truly in the mix for a certain quarterback, we won't talk about it too much here unless something does happen, Broncos country. But to keep your dials tuned in here to Locked On Broncos. This has been Sayre Bedinger's post NFL Scouting Combine mock draft. You can check out a lot of his work as well over at NFL Spin Zone, not to mention predominantly orange of the fan-sided network. Be sure to check out all the action as well. Plus, you get him here every single day alongside myself here on Locked On Broncos. But with that said, Broncos country, that will wrap up today's episode of the show. Thank you so much for making us your first listen of the day. Thank you so much for subscribing and listening, whether it's on your favorite audio podcasting platform or whether it's here on YouTube. Like I said, hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications so you never miss out on a day's worth of Denver Broncos news, content, coverage. And if you love today's video, go ahead and comment down below here in the comment section for the algorithm and share this video as well with somebody that you know who is a Denver Broncos fan. We appreciate you so much, Broncos country. Sayre Bedinger, myself, we'll be back tomorrow. We're going to get into a Broncos mailbag, but we have a special guest this week as well as Tim Jenkins returns as we talk about this year's quarterback class and more. Tim Jenkins here on Locked On Broncos.